Hello and welcome to Curated Classics, the channel that shares the most famous and popular stories from books, films, and history in quick summaries so that you can learn the classics quickly without hours of reading or years of expensive courses. Today you are listening to Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë. This novel is a complex and haunting tale set in the desolate moors of Yorkshire, England. The story revolves around the intense and tumultuous relationship between the passionate and enigmatic Heathcliff and the spirited Catherine Earnshaw. The narrative begins with Mr. Lockwood, a new tenant at Thrushcross Grange, recounting his visit to the neighbouring Wuthering Heights, where he encounters the brooding figure of Heathcliff and the mysterious occurrences that surround him. Intrigued by what he witnesses, Lockwood delves into the history of Wuthering Heights and its inhabitants. Through a series of flashbacks and narrations by Nellie Dean, a servant at both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange, the story unfolds. The novel explores the childhood of Catherine and Heathcliff, who form a deep bond despite their contrasting personalities. However, their relationship is threatened when Catherine meets Edgar Linton, a refined and wealthy neighbor. Catherine's desire for social advancement leads her to accept Edgar's proposal, devastating Heathcliff. Heathcliff, consumed by bitterness and a desire for revenge, embarks on a path of destruction. He marries Isabella Linton, Edgar's sister, purely out of spite, and their relationship becomes an unhappy one. Catherine, torn between her love for Heathcliff and her duty to her husband, falls ill and eventually dies after giving birth to her daughter, also named Catherine. The second generation takes center stage as the story progresses. Heathcliff, now the master of Wuthering Heights, becomes an oppressive and cruel figure. He mistreats his son, Linton, and develops a twisted and obsessive attachment to the young Catherine, seeking to control and manipulate her. The love triangle between Heathcliff, Catherine, and her cousin Hareton Earnshaw forms the backdrop of the later part of the story. As the narrative unfolds, past secrets are revealed, and the consequences of characters' actions become increasingly apparent. The story delves into themes of love, revenge, social class, and the destructive power of unchecked passion. The characters in Wuthering Heights are complex, flawed, and morally ambiguous, creating a dark and haunting atmosphere throughout the novel. In the end, love and redemption manage to find a place amidst the turmoil. The story concludes with the death of Heathcliff and a glimmer of hope for the next generation as Catherine and Hareton find solace in each other, breaking the cycle of pain and hatred. Wuthering Heights is a timeless classic that explores the depths of human nature, portraying the destructive consequences of unchecked desires and the enduring power of love. It is a haunting and unforgettable tale that continues to captivate readers with its richly drawn characters and atmospheric setting. For a more in-depth understanding of the book, we will now provide a chapter-by-chapter breakdown. Chapter 1: Mr. Lockwood's Diary. Mr. Lockwood, a new tenant at Thrushcross Grange, introduces himself as a city gentleman seeking solitude in the country. He narrates his first visit to Wuthering Heights, the neighboring estate, and encounters its strange inhabitants, including Heathcliff, the brooding master of the house, and the reserved housekeeper, Joseph. Lockwood's experience is marked by a hostile welcome and a frightening encounter with a ghostly presence at his window. Chapter 2: A Visit to Wuthering Heights. Lockwood returns to Wuthering Heights and meets Heathcliff's dogs. He becomes intrigued by the mysterious past of the house and its occupants, including the spirited Catherine Earnshaw, who captured his attention during his previous visit. He also learns about the turbulent relationship between Heathcliff and Catherine's brother, Hindley. Chapter 3: The Nightmare. Lockwood suffers from a nightmare that night, wherein he dreams of being attacked by the ghostly figure he encountered at the window. Disturbed by his dream and feeling unwelcome at Wuthering Heights, he decides to leave the estate but plans to return the next day to return a book he borrowed from Catherine. Chapter 4: Arrival of a New Tenant. Lockwood visits Wuthering Heights again to return Catherine's book, but finds the house in disarray. He learns from Joseph that Heathcliff and Hareton, Hindley's young son, have returned from a trip. Lockwood also discovers a room filled with books and inscriptions belonging to Catherine, which sparks his curiosity further. Chapter 5: The Grange. Lockwood returns to Thrushcross Grange and recounts his experiences at Wuthering Heights to his housekeeper, Ellen Nellie Dean. Nellie, who has a deep connection to the inhabitants of both houses, begins to share the history of the Earnshaws and the Lintons. She describes Catherine and Heathcliff's childhood and their close bond, while also hinting at the dark undercurrents and conflicts that exist between the families. Intrigued by the story, Lockwood implores Nellie to continue narrating the events that have shaped Wuthering Heights. These initial chapters introduce the readers to the mysterious atmosphere and characters of the novel. The contrasting settings of Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange, as well as the complex relationships between the characters, lay the groundwork for the intricate and tumultuous tale that unfolds in Wuthering Heights. Chapter 6. The Stranger. Nellie continues her narration, recounting a pivotal event in the story. One day, Catherine and Heathcliff stumble upon Thrushcross Grange, home to the refined Linton family. The encounter leads to a series of events that changes their lives forever. Catherine is attacked by the Lintons' dog and is taken inside the house to recover, while Heathcliff is forced to return to Wuthering Heights. Chapter 7. Catherine's Illness. Catherine stays at Thrushcross Grange for several weeks to recuperate. During her time there, she undergoes a transformation and becomes more refined, adapting to the social expectations of the Lintons. She grows close to Edgar Linton, the gentle and kind-hearted son of the family, and they develop romantic feelings for each other. Chapter 8. The Moors. Nellie describes the stark contrast between the wild and rugged moors, where Wuthering Heights is situated, and the more civilized and cultured environment of Thrushcross Grange. She highlights how Catherine's time at the Grange has altered her behavior and appearance, making her almost unrecognizable to Heathcliff when she returns to Wuthering Heights. Chapter 9. A New Member. Several years pass, and Lockwood returns to Thrushcross Grange after a long absence. He learns from Nellie that Heathcliff has acquired ownership of Wuthering Heights following Hindley's death. Nellie also reveals that Catherine and Edgar have married, which shocks Lockwood. Nellie introduces Hareton, Hindley's son, who is now living at Wuthering Heights and is poorly treated by Heathcliff. Chapter 10. Heathcliff's Confession. Heathcliff, tormented by his love for Catherine and his feelings of betrayal, confides in Nellie about his anguish. He reveals his determination for revenge and expresses his desire to destroy those he holds responsible for his suffering. He admits that his ultimate plan is to gain control over Thrushcross Grange, seeking to exert power and influence over Edgar and his family. These chapters explore the transformation of Catherine, her growing attachment to Edgar, and the simmering hatred and revenge that drive Heathcliff's actions. The stark contrast between the moors and the refined world of Thrushcross Grange is highlighted, emphasizing the clash of social classes and the impact it has on the characters. The stage is set for the unfolding of complex relationships, tragedy, and the consequences of Heathcliff's relentless pursuit of vengeance. Chapter 11. Hareton Earnshaw. Nellie continues her narration, revealing the deteriorating relationship between Heathcliff and Hareton. Heathcliff mistreats Hareton, treating him as a servant rather than acknowledging his rightful position as the heir to Wuthering Heights. Nellie observes the harsh treatment and reflects on the irony of the situation, as Hareton's father, Hindley, had also mistreated Heathcliff during his childhood. Chapter 12. The Ghost of Catherine. One evening, Lockwood, the tenant of Thrushcross Grange, experiences another encounter with the ghost of Catherine Earnshaw. The apparition appears at his window, pleading to be let in. Disturbed by the encounter, Lockwood becomes determined to uncover the mysteries surrounding Catherine's haunting presence. Chapter 13. A Visitor. Lockwood returns to Wuthering Heights and encounters a new visitor named Mr. Kenneth, who is Catherine's physician. Lockwood learns more about Catherine's deteriorating health and her struggles in her marriage to Edgar. Mr. Kenneth warns Lockwood about the destructive influence of Heathcliff and the toxic environment at Wuthering Heights. Chapter 14. The Lovers. Nellie recounts the growing love and affection between Catherine and Hareton. Despite their initial hostility, they gradually develop a genuine connection, bonding over their shared experiences of mistreatment by Heathcliff. Their relationship offers a glimmer of hope and redemption amidst the darkness that envelops Wuthering Heights. Chapter 15: The Introduction. Lockwood returns to Thrushcross Grange and is reintroduced to Heathcliff's daughter-in-law, Isabella Linton. Isabella, who married Heathcliff's son, Linton, against her brother Edgar's wishes, describes her unhappy marriage and the abusive behavior of her husband. Lockwood advises her to leave Wuthering Heights, but Isabella feels trapped and afraid of Heathcliff's wrath. These chapters further unravel the complex relationships and dynamics within the story. The mistreatment of Hareton by Heathcliff mirrors the cycle of abuse that occurred in the previous generation. Catherine's ghostly presence continues to haunt the narrative, and the budding relationship between Catherine and Hareton offers a glimpse of hope amidst the darkness. Isabella's introduction sheds light on the toxic and destructive environment that Heathcliff has fostered at Wuthering Heights. The stage is set for further turmoil and tragedy as the story progresses. Chapter 16: A Stormy Night. A stormy night brings Lockwood back to Wuthering Heights seeking shelter. He finds himself stranded due to the severity of the weather and is forced to spend the night at the house. Inside, he discovers a hidden room that contains Catherine's diary. As he reads through its pages, he uncovers the depth of Catherine's conflicted feelings for both Edgar and Heathcliff. Chapter 17: The Milk-Blooded Coward. Lockwood's reading is interrupted by a ghostly encounter with Catherine herself. He is haunted by her presence and becomes increasingly unsettled. Heathcliff appears, and the tension between the two men escalates. Lockwood's night at Wuthering Heights is marked by fear and confusion. Chapter 18: The Death of Isabella Linton. Nellie continues her narration, describing the tragic fate of Isabella Linton. After enduring years of abuse from her husband, Linton, Isabella decides to escape from Wuthering Heights. She seeks refuge at Thrushcross Grange, where she gives birth to a child named Linton Heathcliff. However, her health deteriorates rapidly, and she passes away, leaving her son in the care of her brother, Edgar. Chapter 19: The Return. Heathcliff, consumed by grief and despair over the loss of Catherine, becomes increasingly fixated on the afterlife and the possibility of reuniting with her. His relentless pursuit of the supernatural becomes a cause for concern among those around him. Meanwhile, Cathy, Edgar's daughter, grows into a spirited and curious young girl who yearns to explore the moors. Chapter 20: Catherine's Disappearance. Cathy's desire to venture into the moors leads her to encounter Hareton Earnshaw, whom she befriends. They share stories and form a connection, much to the dismay of Heathcliff. When Cathy fails to return home one evening, her family becomes worried. It is discovered that she has gone to Wuthering Heights and is being held captive by Heathcliff. These chapters delve deeper into the psychological turmoil and haunted nature of the characters. Lockwood's experiences at Wuthering Heights intensify, further blurring the lines between reality and the supernatural. The tragic fate of Isabella underscores the destructive consequences of Heathcliff's vengeful actions. The growing connection between Cathy and Hareton presents a glimmer of hope, while Cathy's abduction by Heathcliff sets the stage for further tension and conflict. The narrative continues to explore themes of obsession, revenge, and the lingering power of the past. Chapter 21: The Search. Nellie narrates the search for Cathy after her disappearance at Wuthering Heights. Edgar, filled with worry, sets out with Nellie and others to find her. They eventually locate Cathy at Wuthering Heights, but she refuses to leave, revealing her deep emotional attachment to Hareton. Chapter 22: Heathcliff's Marriage. Heathcliff takes advantage of Edgar's weakened state and the vulnerability of the Linton family. He coerces Edgar's sister, Isabella, into marrying him, despite her initial dislike for him. Their union is solely driven by Heathcliff's desire for revenge and control over Edgar's inheritance. Chapter 23: Catherine's Return. Catherine Linton, Edgar and Catherine's daughter, returns home after spending time with her aunt, Linton's sister. She becomes acquainted with Hareton Earnshaw, who has been living as a servant at Wuthering Heights. Catherine is intrigued by Hareton's intelligence and vulnerability, and they begin to form a bond. Chapter 24: Last Interview with Nellie. Nellie recounts her final conversation with Catherine Earnshaw, who is now married to Linton Heathcliff. Catherine expresses her deep unhappiness in her marriage and her lingering love for Hareton. She confides in Nellie about her regrets and her longing for a different life. Chapter 25: Meeting with Catherine. Lockwood, the tenant of Thrushcross Grange, returns to Wuthering Heights after a long absence. He encounters a grown-up Catherine who has become ill and frail. Catherine shares her despair and misery, trapped in an unhappy marriage with Linton Heathcliff, who is manipulative and cruel. Lockwood witnesses the toxic dynamics at play within the household and the toll it takes on Catherine's well-being. These chapters explore the consequences of Heathcliff's actions and the impact they have on the next generation. Cathy's attachment to Hareton highlights the possibility of breaking the cycle of hatred and animosity. The forced marriage between Isabella and Heathcliff exemplifies the depths to which Heathcliff will go to exact revenge. Catherine Linton's misery in her marriage showcases the emotional turmoil that permeates Wuthering Heights. The narrative continues to delve into themes of love, redemption, and the destructive power of obsession. Chapter 26: The Night Before the Wedding. Nellie narrates the events leading up to the wedding of Catherine Linton and Linton Heathcliff. Despite her lingering love for Hareton, Catherine feels obligated to fulfill her father's dying wish by marrying Linton. The night before the wedding, Hareton and Catherine share a tender moment, expressing their feelings for each other. Chapter 27: The Wedding. Catherine reluctantly marries Linton, succumbing to the pressure from her family and societal expectations. The ceremony takes place at Thrushcross Grange, with Heathcliff orchestrating the proceedings. The marriage is marked by a somber and oppressive atmosphere, revealing the control and manipulation exerted by Heathcliff. Chapter 28: Heathcliff's Revenge. Following the wedding, Heathcliff intensifies his plan for revenge. He isolates Catherine at Wuthering Heights, separating her from her family and loved ones. Heathcliff's cruelty is fully realized as he subjects Catherine to emotional torment and uses her as a pawn in his scheme to gain control over Edgar's wealth and property. Chapter 29: Edgar's Death. Edgar, already weakened by illness, succumbs to his deteriorating health. His death marks a significant turning point in the narrative, leaving Catherine at the mercy of Heathcliff's power. With Edgar's passing, Heathcliff gains full control over Thrushcross Grange and asserts his dominance over the remaining inhabitants. Chapter 30: Linton's Death. Linton, who has always been frail, grows weaker under the harsh treatment and manipulation of Heathcliff. His health rapidly declines, and he eventually passes away. Linton's death further solidifies Heathcliff's control over the Linton family, leaving Catherine even more vulnerable and trapped. In these chapters, the consequences of Heathcliff's revenge become increasingly apparent. Catherine's forced marriage to Linton and her subsequent isolation underline the extent of Heathcliff's manipulation and cruelty. Edgar's death and Linton's demise intensify the control and power Heathcliff holds over the remaining characters. The atmosphere grows darker as the narrative reaches its climax, delving deeper into themes of manipulation, despair, and the destructive nature of obsession. Chapter 31: The Final Chapter. Nellie recounts the events leading to Heathcliff's eventual demise. Catherine, now widowed and broken, falls into a deep depression. Heathcliff's own health begins to deteriorate rapidly as he becomes consumed by his obsession with Catherine. The narrative portrays the toll that their tormented love has taken on both of them. Chapter 32: The End. Lockwood returns to Thrushcross Grange after a 2-year absence and receives news of Heathcliff's death. Nellie provides details of Heathcliff's passing, describing his lifeless body and the sense of relief that permeates Wuthering Heights. Despite his harsh and vengeful nature, Heathcliff's death brings a degree of closure to the story. Chapter 33: Appendix A. The reader is presented with an appendix written by an unknown author who gives a glimpse into the future. The author describes the aftermath of Heathcliff's death and the transformation of Wuthering Heights and its inhabitants. Hareton and Cathy, now married, work to rebuild the broken bonds between their families, offering hope for a better future. Chapter 34: Appendix B. The appendix continues, shedding light on the identities and connections of the narrators. The author reveals that the events recounted in the novel were pieced together from diaries, letters, and conversations. The identities of some characters are unveiled, further providing insight into the complex relationships portrayed in the story. These final chapters bring the narrative to a close, depicting the resolution of the conflicts and the eventual demise of Heathcliff. Catherine's depression and the impact of her choices are examined, while the appendix offers additional context and explanation of the events. The story concludes with a glimmer of hope as the next generation seeks to mend the wounds of the past and move towards a more promising future. Thank you for listening to Curated Classics. If you enjoyed this story and it provided valuable insights, we hope you will give this video a like by clicking the thumbs up, sharing it with other lifelong learners, and please check out more of the greatest stories throughout history on the Curated Classics channel. See you next time.